Arbeloa really confused Madrid's fans, whether he's following Ancelotti's footsteps and Zidane or Solari and Benitez. In one day, you'd see a good day of Zidane and Ancelotti. In another day, he is like Benitez and Solari. But in this episode, we'll discover both sides. When he's like Ancelotti and when he's like Benitez. Let's dive in. Let's understand. It's obvious that Arbiola started going back to the roots. What I mean by going back to the roots is playing Ancelotti's way. Let me explain to you what I mean by this. Let's begin with the defensive structure. Arbiola started playing with a mid-block most of the time, with 4-4-2, especially with the absence of Mbappe and Bellingham. And the purpose behind this formation is to give stability to the team and give more freedom to the front line, especially Vinícius Júnior. With the defensive structure, I would begin with the positive aspect, especially the organization that we've seen against Manchester City. We've seen Thiago, the rising star, was everywhere, helping out during the defending side and supporting in the offensive side, alongside with Valverde, who was helping out Arnold all the time against Doko to stop him from creating danger on the left flank. And sometimes we've seen Rudiger helping them out. Therefore, they were playing 3 against 1 because the only dangerous player in Manchester City was Doko in this game. And in order to stop him, you needed a well defensive structure. Valverde, beside helping out Arnold, he was the man who was marking O'Reilly, especially when O'Reilly was playing as an inverted back and joins the midfield to create an overload in the central midfield. Valverde was there to stop O'Reilly from creating this overload, even though when he was going to help out Arnold, he was asking Chomini to cover him. If Chomini wasn't available, Thiago was there to help out with the defending duties. Besides Valverde, I want to talk about Thiago. This guy, since he started playing in the first team, he's been impressive. And I didn't want to judge him from the first and second game. But in Manchester City's game, he was impressive with his defensive duties as well as his offensive duties. Even in Celta Vigo's game, here you could see when he tried to implement a high press on Celta Vigo's defender and he was able to tackle the ball. You don't see this defensive action normally from Real Madrid's players, but this guy has something. And now I want to talk about the negative aspect, or let me call it when you feel the team is playing like Benitez's team. To understand better what I mean by this, let's take a look at this example. The team settles into the 4-4-2 with clear line spacing. The forwards hold central lanes rather than sprinting towards the ball. Here it was clear, but the intention was to shape the field. We've seen many times Vinicius Júnior, he's around the opponent player, but he's not pressing. We've seen that in Celta Vigo's game as well. When the front line doesn't press, here we see a disaster. Here where Real Madrid's problems happen. Everybody is blaming the back line. But the main problem is the front line during the high press or the mid press. Because when the opponent is able to bypass the front line, or what we call the first defending line, the disaster occurs. When the front line doesn't press, the back line has to step forward. And we've seen this happen a lot in the recent games. I would take this example when Carreras stepped forward to implement the defensive action. We can see here how Osasuna bypassed the front line when Carreras advanced without synchronized compensation behind him. The shell inverted. His height created a visual advantage, but a structural liability. Alaba was pulled laterally, abandoning his central pin. Once the central defender vacates the axis, the 4-4-2 lose its hinge. What looked like territorial dominance turned into box exposure without central pinning. The distance between center backs increased just enough for late runners to attack blind zones. Wow, 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 wow. Now, when the opponent was able to exploit the space behind the defenders, is it the backline mistakes only or the front line? Here, I want you to imagine one thing. Imagine that Vinicius Júnior or Mbappe, whoever is playing at the front, implemented a high press, an actual high press. Do you think that Carreras would need to leave his place and stay out of position to implement this defensive action? I don't know. You tell me in the comment. Just to make you understand more and prove my point, there was another incident when Carvajal stepped forward to defend against Monoz in Sosona's game. This incident made me go crazy. Imagine Carvajal, who had like 7 Champions League, 6, 7, 8, I don't know, I lost count. But imagine Carvajal, he was manipulated 1 versus 1. A guy who's like 35 years old, who's about to retire, it was manipulated. Look at this example. This it demonstrated the fundamental truth. The system has no buffer layer. If the initial 1 versus 1 break fails, the second defender is structurally too engaged elsewhere to compensate. This shell is not redundancy based, it is precision based. And this is dangerous because we all know that Real Madrid's players, they don't like to press. That means there's no room for mistakes for defenders. Forgive me, Real Madrid's fans. Today I might be harsh a little bit with this point, especially the counter press or high press, especially with the frontline players, because all the disasters begins from the front line. Real Madrid, they lost the lead in La Liga for Barcelona after losing 2 games. And the reasons were the front line. Not because they weren't scoring, because they weren't defending and not doing their job well. Let me take you to another example when Celta Vigo was able to create a danger and score goal at the same time. Same mistakes. Let's take a look at the first example. Here in minute 450, Real Madrid, Celta Vigo is building from the back very comfortably, and we could see the distance between the player who's holding the ball from Celta Vigo and when he's surrounded by 3 players from Real Madrid. None of them was able to tackle the ball, and he was able to send a long ball which exploited the back line of Real Madrid. Here you tell me, whose fault is it? Is it just the back line or the front line as well? If you don't believe me, just watch. Here's another example. In minute 832, a Celta Vigo defender is sending a long ball. But before sending the long ball, see how many players he surrounded around. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 players, and none of them was able to press him and tackle the ball. And he was able to send a long ball behind the defenders. And that tackler was able to receive it. Tell me, isn't it enough proof? Let me show you the last one. I know you're bored of this, but I have a point here to deliver. That Real Madrid's problem is super obvious. If El Capitano from this studio is able to discover it, how about Arbeloa? He has like probably 60 plus tactical analysis, unless if he doesn't have any. Or maybe the team is run by Florentino Perez. I don't know. But let me take you to the last example. In minute 24-25, the left back of Celta Vigo is comfortably having the ball. And he's surrounded by 2 players. And one of these players, I expected him to press Valverde and Arda Güler. No press. Nobody pressed. Therefore, the defender was able to send a long ball to exploit the spaces behind the defenders. And and I'm leaving the big cake for Manchester City later on. The problems are obvious. Let me stop here and move to the next point, which is Vinícius Júnior. Yes, I have criticized Vinícius Júnior in the defending duties. Let me be honest. Vinícius Júnior is one of the weapons that Arbeloa relies on in the recent games. And probably he's the best player in the team in the last 5 games, especially during the absence of Mbappe. Vinícius Júnior, he was almost the only solution for Real Madrid to score. He was able to score against Real Sociedad, the hat-trick, Benfica, and other games. He was the only solution. Even against Osasuna, he was able to score the only goal that Real Madrid scored. Besides scoring, he's creating a chaos on the left flank. Now, from the left flank, I want to go to the right flank and the right corridors. And here, I'm talking about Arnold and Valverde. When we start talking about Arnold, we start talking about a tactical shift that he brought to Real Madrid, which is verticality. Unfortunately, Real Madrid this season wasn't able to benefit from Arnold and his abilities due to his injuries from the beginning of the season. One of the solutions that Arnold brings to the table, his beautiful diagonal passes. I want to take a moment and thank you for being here. If you enjoy this content, please make sure you subscribe because this is going to help us a lot to grow. And I promise you, from my side, I will do everything to develop this show and provide the most value to you. Thank you. Now, we could go back to the video. We started seeing Arbeloa, when Arnold is available, tries to build up from the right side. We can see the diagonal pass towards the far left follows control circulation. The opponent shifts before the switch is played. The pass punishes orientation delay. The key principle is defensive manipulation. before execution. And we see at this incident that Arnold gave Vinicius Júnior the opportunity to play 1 versus 1. And we know that Vini loves this game.
I love this game! I love this game!
Trent Alexander-Arnold always finds a solution when the opponent plays in a compact defense. We could see here's one of Trent's most dangerous deliveries occurs when a central striker pins both center backs. The central reference prevents early stepping. Do you know what I like the most about Arnold? He makes football easy and he takes you from point A to B in a straight way. Here against Celta Vigo, Arnold received the ball and there was a massive space in front of him. No pressure. So he utilized the moment and saw Vinicius Júnior between 3 players. So what he did, he is like, let me send a long ball to Vinicius. He sent it to the empty space behind the defenders. And Vini was able to get the ball. But unfortunately, he wasn't able to score because the ball hit the post. And this shows you Arnold's quality. And the last part about Arnold, I like the chemistry between Arnold and Valverde. They always switch positions. And you see the underlap and overlap between these players. Especially we've seen that in Celta Vigo's game when Valverde played as a right back and Arnold played as a right winger. And this created confusion in the opponent's defending line. Now I want to take a moment and talk about Valverde. Valverde is not just aggressive and helpful in the defensive side. He became a striker in the recent games, especially against Manchester City when the team actually needed him. He was able to score a beautiful goal from a vertical long pass from Courtois. The second goal that Valverde scored against Manchester City, it came from a direct play from Courtois to Vinicius, Vinicius to Valverde. Wow, wow, wow. It's obvious that Arbeloa is trying to play Ancelotti's way, but sometimes he falls into the trap and he plays with Penitez and Solari's way, and that way ain't gonna take Real Madrid nowhere. But in the Champions League, Real Madrid is always there. Whether they're playing with Arbeloa or Zidane or Ancelotti, it doesn't matter. At the end of this video, I would really thank you for being here. And if you enjoyed this video, give us that like button and don't forget to subscribe. Peace!